All right, we're going live again. Special thanks to everyone who made this possible. I want to take a minute and thank everyone listening. And remember to tune in everywhere podcasts are heard. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com and check out all the sponsors. And special thanks to Quartz and Firearms this week. We're heading behind enemy lines, so to speak, with this guest, New York's Congressman Lee Zeldin. What's going on, Lee?
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to be with you, Congressman, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking the time. I want to dive right in for a second and thank you for not only your service, but also thank you for serving and representing this great country.
It's an honor to serve. I've taken a few different oaths between the military and fast forward to now in Congress. And as we're seeing right now with our healthcare professionals, our first responders, our law enforcement, our truck drivers, our grocery store workers, there's many ways to serve at different times. And fortunately, right now we have a lot of great Americans banding together to get through this.
I want to dive right in, and say, it's amazing what's going on, the movement and just the mobility. But how's it going in New York for you, and what are you seeing on the ground level there in New York?
It's tough. Honestly, I represent as you know, the first congressional district of New York, located on the east end of Long Island, and Suffolk and Nassau County have more cases between our two counties than any other state in the country. There have been some days where maybe New Jersey has had a few more cases than we have. So while all this attention is on New York City, we've gotten hit pretty hard. Basically, a petri dish of coronavirus in downstate New York right now, and we're seeing our hospitals get closer to capacity, and whether it's use of PPE, ventilators, other needs, it's not the ideal circumstances on many fronts here at these local hospitals.
Yeah, it's insane to see just the amount of effort, going into this, and just even in New York alone. I mean, it's crazy, but it's really inspiring at the same time to see such a great everyone pull together in the way that they have. Do you I was talking about this earlier with Congressman Gates and even Don Jr. Is it crazy to watch? Are you in awe of your own constituents and your own people?
It's a moment in time unlike any other thing I've experienced while serving in Congress. And what I'm seeing, for the most part, people aren't Republicans or Democrats. They're Americans. I heard one colleague from the opposite side of the aisle in the House reference the atrophy in muscles of partisanship for some in Congress. And, that's unfortunate. And the same goes for some people who are out there in the public, but most people are focused on this as Americans first, and it's great to see people banding together, coming together, looking out for each other.
Yeah, the innovation that we're hoping to see come out of this, both in sterilization and just the approach of infectious diseases, is something really that I think in the aftermath we're all gonna be watching, and that's something that I would think has to be something that you're kind of analyzing as you go and hoping to be better next time, because there's no doubt infectious diseases. I mean, we saw it with the HIV and AIDS epidemic, and even now with this, that the innovation and what comes out of it is going to be what's going to be the exciting and kind of glowing thing, as opposed to what we're dealing with now, being in the petri dish, so to speak.
Yeah, there are going to be aspects of this where we're going to come out of this stronger. One of the elements of that, one of the things that makes our military great, is that we do after-action reports to learn what worked well in the mission, what didn't work that needs to be improved, and in the future, should we be going into a possible pandemic where between the national stockpile and a manufacturing plan, we don't have the ability to just within our own borders produce what we need to respond. Medicine too. This reliance right now on China is unfortunate. Ironically, that's probably the worst country in the world as far as people who have engaged in a disinformation campaign and refused to accept responsibility. So we need to get better there. I think you'll see the medical advancements, testing, whether it's vaccine, treatment, so many different elements of what we're seeing in real time do have positive long-term outcomes. But really, the ultimate goal here is just to get through this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Congressman. It's I look at it, as the sterilization, but being one of the biggest advancements. I mean, we're going to take hygiene to a whole nother level after this. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion, I believe, at the least.
Well, yeah, I got to say, to that point, I mean, I shake a lot of hands as a member of Congress. The president talks about how many hands he shakes.
He's a germaphobe, huh? Yeah.
Right. And I would say that, if I am having a meeting in my office and, there are times where, you might shake 10 hands into the meeting and one of them just didn't feel right. And, it's possible that everybody will come out of this more aware, more hygienic, more people washing their own hands. That's all good because we have been transmitting many different things between us as humans as a consequence of people not taking this seriously. So you're bringing up another point. Doesn't require some expert, some genius innovation. Doesn't require any technology. It's just common sense to be more cognizant of what you're doing to protect your own health and those around you.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And I actually was talking about that with a trauma surgeon in New Jersey, a friend of mine, and the same thing came up. She said, the reality is people just have to take their hygiene seriously and they have to take it to another level now. And everyone needs to pay attention and be aware. It's troubling that this has to happen for that to take hold. But I mean, that's just the real reality of the situation. Last night, Dr. Smith mentioned, some of the potential, I don't want to say cures, but vaccinations for this pandemic. And he said he thinks we're staring at the beginning of the end. Do you believe in that, or do you see hope in some of the drugs that they're saying can really mitigate this?
You're seeing a lot of positive reports. I mean, there's a global scramble on with regards to innovations on testing, innovations on treatment, innovations on vaccine. The way that we follow a process here in the FDA is that we, in the United States, we want to ensure to the maximum extent possible that when a doctor is prescribing to a patient a treatment or a vaccine, that it's something that the government knows based off of studies and science is going to do what it's supposed to do, and that you're aware of possible side effects. Our country does a good job at that. Here, we have to expedite this stuff as quickly as possible. What you don't want to do is, cut the corner so much that you fall flat on your face, and you end up having a story, as you might read in other countries elsewhere in the world, where they just rushed to, all drink the same fluid, and a whole bunch of people end up, getting poisoned, and they were essentially making the whole situation they were suffering a whole lot worse. So I am getting a ton of positive reports of advancements regarding treatments and vaccines. The vaccine timeline's a little bit longer. Dr. Fauci talked about this yesterday. Talked about it recently with one of these White House press briefings about the timeline of 12 to 18 months. That's a bit longer, but I understand it's not because anybody wants it to be longer. Nobody wants it to be any longer than necessary, but you just want to make sure that, before you're giving millions and millions of Americans a vaccine, that's going to do what you expect it to do. And in the treatment piece, you're already starting to see the studies. I imagine we'll start to get results back imminently. We're already starting to get some reports of people who are trying particular treatments and they're getting better. Hopefully it is because of the treatment they're being given.
Yeah, and there's been such great mobilization, even with some of the things done up at Stony Brook. It's just been, you guys have fought, a tremendous battle, and like you said, it's unprecedented. It's really, there's no playbook for this. It's never happened, and I applaud you for that, and even the efforts in Stony Brook and some of the things that you guys are doing. It's amazing.
I'll tell you, I have a lot of hospitals in the first congressional district, and what I did very recently was call around for an update, checking back in with each of the hospitals. And while there is overlap in some of the techniques they're using to respond to what's going on, at the same time, in some way, every hospital is responding to this uniquely. You mentioned Stony Brook University, and whether it's bringing in a new system to be able to reuse the N95 masks, it's the building of the Army Corps, a 1,000-bed temporary hospital. It's splitting a ventilator, using a BPAP, and just all sorts of other innovations, including donations, scrambles for doctors and staff from other parts of the country. It is a whole of government, from inside of government and out approach, where again there's no party stripes to this, and that's one of the things that's been frustrating as I watch this. To that point about atrophy along the way, some people can't help themselves but just try to let everything out of their system by just blaming the president. It's like, I mean, really? Like, I mean, there's a time as November gets closer. If you want to go there, by the way, you might want to sit down, speaker, because of A, B, and C. But if you want to go there, then have that debate, but don't have it right now. And when you do, again, you might want to do some self-reflection, because even then it's not going to be a good decision.
Yeah, he's hands down the most embattled president of my time. I mean, it's a short time, but hands down, he's dealt with the most flack. I mean, he's up there every day taking the bullets, as I said to Donnie. And, it's not, you don't like to use the term fair, right? Because what's fair in the First Amendment? But at the same time, it's kind of like, guys, this is a great time to come together and let's fix the issue. And as you said, November's a time for partisan politics.
Yeah, let's exactly. And some of the coverage where one night there's a network cutting out of a White House coronavirus task force briefing where substantive questions are being answered that are very important in order to update the American public on that particular question that was asked, and the answer is given. You might not like the answer. That's fine. If you want to engage in commentary after the fact, like you just mentioned, we have a free press, and what's fair in the way the system is set up. But then on the flip side, the next day, Governor Cuomo is giving a press conference, and the same network is covering him talking, to his brother, joking around about 14 different things from growing up together, and in that exchange there isn't much of an update on anything, and you're covering that uninterrupted, and when it's done you're all applauding of how cute it was. So like the inconsistency here in some of the coverage is unfortunate, but what I would say overall is that all of the media has been covering this better, and there's plenty to go around to complain about coverage, but covering it better than what we just experienced with several months going through the impeachment, and then 2.5 years with regards to the Mueller probe. It's just nice to be able to put on a story on a particular network, and for at least 4 minutes, just get some raw news.
Yeah,
I mean, you're straight.
You're 100% right, and I think coming out of this, I look at it, Congressman, as he's going to have so many great stories. And look, we're going to get out the vote in November. At the end of the day, and it's going to come together. I know that it will, and I know that he has time to pull the economy together. The economy fundamentals are sound. They'll get back we'll get back to work. What does New York look like coming out of this? If you have a crystal ball, how does it play out?
Well, for one, the short answer is that we don't know. The people who are in the best position to make predictions are facing a range of predictions where we could be over the hump in a week, we could be over the hump in 3 weeks. We don't know, and it's kind of like meteorology. You turn on the news, and you want to know a week from now what the temperature is going to be in a particular location because you're going on a family trip. And you don't want them to say that, the temperature is going to be somewhere between 55 and 77 degrees. you watch that show and you're like, okay, well that doesn't help me out much. You want them to tell you it's going to be 67 degrees, a week from now. But, so they give you the number, but really it's just a range. So as far as New York, the timeline of us getting through it, we're not sure, but hopefully there is a lot of social distancing going on in some cases. There should be more, and we're seeing people exposing others recklessly and causing community spread, and then the headaches only increase. I hope that we're that we're only about a week from getting over the hump. It's still going to be with us for a while, and the economic effects are going to be around, are going to be felt for months. So we're not going to just snap our fingers and everything's going to be back to the way it was. Things will never be the way they were before, but there's also a way for us to get through this where we figure out how to come out of it even stronger. It's going to be different, but maybe at some point in the future, you and I are having another conversation, and we're looking at an economy that's even stronger than it is right now. We're looking at preparedness for a pandemic better than we ever were before in our country. We're more healthy than we've ever been before in our country, and that has to be our goal of working together to achieve that.
Yeah, and, one more question I gotta ask. There's been that. It's Matt Gaetz said. Congressman Gaetz said. It wasn't quiet. There's been kind of that quiet assault on the Second Amendment through all this. I know in New York that's not shocking to you, but does it surprise you at all that that's been going on? It's been an undercurrent. Trying to stymie some of the gun stores and some of the FFLs and some of the folks out there.
If it was 10 years ago and that you and I were looking at a crystal ball predicting the future, I would say with near 100% confidence that this would be playing out just as it is in a state like New York as it relates to the Second Amendment, because you have people who want to take away all firearms in New York. You have others who want to take away what they call all assault weapons in New York. And then you start asking, well, what do you mean by that? As you saw with the SAFE Act, where, by having a flash suppressor, a muzzle compressor, a collapsible buttstock, a pistol grip, a thumb grip, you had a single feature and your rifle turns into a quote unquote assault rifle. And the person who's advocating for the change has no idea what we're even talking about. So you could see this coming a decade ago. But, fortunately, this moment in time, they also don't control the White House. They don't control the federal government, the executive branch, the courts. So they are going to get away with a bit. They'll try to get away with a bit more, but you can't allow them to achieve their ultimate goal, which for many of them is to just trample all over Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, it's disheartening to see that become, an undercurrent, but not unexpected, especially in some pockets in some areas. They're still fighting the battle in Massachusetts. I was on the phone with the NSSF and folks, they're still fighting the battle up there. It's crazy. And I know Charlie Baker, the governor there. It's bananas to see it play out. But, my hat's off to you in all the efforts and everything that you've done in trying to bring this home. And I'm hoping America gets back to work. I know that they will soon, and I'm hoping that, you guys are able to get back to work in Congress and do the great work. Hopefully there'll be some things on the agenda come November that we'll be able to push through, especially in regards to the Second Amendment, and be able to further that. I was talking to, Rudy Giuliani about it, the mayor, and I just would love to see national reciprocity start to come to the forefront again, or see the conversation start up again, because it's just things like that and things like the NFA have been, ridiculous, and it's just insane, the cottage industry that the NFA has become. I'm still willing to pay my $200 tax stamp, but geez, it'd be great if we could just pay that at the register and be done with it as a registered item at the point of attack. And I don't see why that can't get through.
Yeah, and as a co-sponsor of the concealed carry reciprocity bill, I try to explain that argument that you have law-abiding men and women in your district, in your community, who, when they travel, want to have an ability to protect themselves. They're trained. They are using it for defensive purposes only. It's their right, and they're, again, law-abiding. And there's 100% of what I just said is outside of the comprehension and the argument that you're getting from the other side of the debate. And none of us want to see someone with a firearm who's going to use it to do really bad things and not practice safety, to harm other people. We all share that goal as Americans, but you have to ensure you're protecting law-abiding Americans as you do it. And coming from a state like New York, I'll tell you, there's a lot of intense opposition that I face when I engage in that argument. When they ask me, why do you co-sponsor that legislation?
Yeah. It's too bad. I mean, you don't deserve that. It's a simple argument, especially on the NFA side too. I mean, with reciprocity, we know politically it'll be a horse trade, but on the NFA side, it's really a simple process, guys. Come on, I don't even want to. We'll lose too much time getting into it, but it really is such a simple process, and I'm hoping that we see at least some movement in the next 4 years in some one of those spaces. So. Yeah, what are you going to do? But I know you're time sensitive, and you've said so much, and I'm looking forward to your work and what you do in the next coming months. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on and spend some time talking to my listeners and giving them a little bit of your input and insight. 100%.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me. I look forward to next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Congressman. That's Congressman Lee Zeldin. I appreciate you. I want to take a minute to thank the sponsors. I want to thank Volkortson Firearms, and head over to www.johnbartoloshow and be sure and check us out and leave a review if you head over to iTunes.